Hello and welcome. I am Che Rodriguez.
And I'm Mathur. Today we bring you a special edition, Portrait of a President. In this portrait, we take a cameo look at His Excellency, Mr. Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson, who was sworn into office on March the 19th, 1997.
The office of the President, the highest office in the land, is a symbol of our nation, representing the hopes and aspirations of our people.
It's been a long road from the schoolyard of Castara to the grounds of the President's house. But even as a child, there was the promise of greatness.
And it was here Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson, someone above the ordinary, would receive his first impressions of life. But he would also leave an impression upon the people that he would one day lead.
I first met ANR as a child of 2 years. We came into Methodist school, and as it happened, I was the infant teacher, and so I was his first teacher. He taught him for a few years until he went over to the Standard 1. But of course, he had promise, you know. He showed a lot of promise. You looked at him and you said, this boy could be a statesman, you know. You look at his bearing and, you know, never gave any worry or anything of the kind. And he was quite brilliant. Or you look at some children and you say, it looks like a statesman, eh? You know, the way you carry yourself, you have a look about you that sometimes the old people say, you see, that boy is going to make something. I suppose everybody around here, they had that same feeling, a feeling of pride. As you know, sometimes when you talk, you say, our boy. It was our boy. He has worked hard. And whatever happens, he deserves it, I think.
Mr. Robinson and I went to the same school, but we were not classmates. And his father taught me in school. And, well, he was not he was a very brilliant fellow, more than I. We was not classmates, and he used to be out on the field with the other boys. He wasn't playing cricket with them. When they are cricketing, he wasn't playing with them, but he was aside of them. And he used to have a book in his hand. Same time he gone to look at the cricket, he has his book in his hand. And when, like, they have a wicket fall, he will laugh, and then his eyes back in his book.
His father used to be the principal of Castara Methodist School, and it's under him he won his exhibition to come to Bishops. So coming in those days from the home where his father was a headmaster, it meant that he had all the discipline necessary to be a straightforward young man. And I don't remember ANR getting a flogging from the principal, Mr. Jordan, in those days, because many of us would make a little mistake here and there and so on. But ANR Robinson was always straightforward and stuck to his books. He was really, really, really a bright fellow. One that we endeavored to emulate and copy them, because he's really an example to was an example to many of us.
I was a student at Bishop's High School from 1941 to 1946. Mr. Robinson was 2 forms ahead of me, but as the school population was small at that time, everybody knew each other. I remember him distinctly as being somebody who was always neatly dressed. He seemed very organized and methodical. He was always calm, good-natured, and he was hardworking, but he participated in everything. The principal at that time was fond of quoting a certain remark. He would say, "Seest thou a man diligent about his business, he will stand before kings." And whenever he quoted that, I would say to myself, there goes Ray Robinson. He was a scout, he played cricket, but I think his first love was tennis. He was good on the tennis court. And I was not really surprised when he decided to do law, because we had a vibrant literary and debating society, and it was a pleasure to listen to him. He was always so convincing, and we would sit there and say, I wish I could be as eloquent as he is. Besides knowing him at school, on a Sunday we worshipped at the same church, Scarborough Methodist Church.
The Methodist Church, formed out of the movement of the Wesleys, has as its main pillar the search for Christian holiness. And by Christian holiness, we really mean that holiness unto God and unto each other. Certainly, holiness in the Methodist Church has as its main focus social holiness. So it is not just personal or inward holiness. Therefore, Methodists have always been encouraged to take a very active part in the social life of their communities and their countries. The Methodist movement actually was born out of a reform of British society. So it is quite easy to see that ANR Robinson and his father and the Robinson family, steeped in the life of the Methodist Church, would have embraced a career of service to the community, and someone who has exemplified the marks of social holiness by attaching himself in his own personal growth to God and making that being reflected in his work with his fellow human beings in service to the community.
Well, I myself could remember him later, being around. I knew when he was a lawyer in courthouse and so on. He was doing some humanitarian work, because at that time I knew of people who had case and couldn't afford to pay a lawyer. And he did stand up for them, and I was one of those persons who were fortunate to benefit from that sort of thing.
Yeah, so what most people don't know is that Mr. Robinson is a deeply religious man. His upbringing, his father was Methodist schoolmaster, and in those days when you're a schoolmaster, you're also pastor in the village and so on. And Methodism in Tobago was, well, you can say, the essence of Christian principles and love and sharing and caring, and that kind of atmosphere in which he grew up. And although he would appear to be not a mixer, he's shy, he's just shy. And because of the same upbringing, very, very shy, and people more presented him than he presented himself to anybody. So that his personal caring and for people, sometimes they can't even recognize it because of his withdrawn and quiet and calm approach to situations. But he's a very, very, very caring man and loves people, and he expresses it in all sorts of ways. Not aggressive in, not outgoing, but you feel it, you feel the the love and the care, in his presence, one feels it. And I remember if he didn't see you for like Christmas, and you didn't pass home, he'd make a fuss. Where were you? Where were you? I have special things here for my people and my close friends. And he really used to have the special drinks there and so on and so on.
Feel good because Mr. Robinson come from India and plenty people don't think that people in the rural areas can't, they think that they can't do nothing. But Mr. Robinson is a good role model and he could help to build up self-esteem.
Throughout his career, President Robinson has championed the cause of equality of treatment for the people of Tobago.
And for him, the apparent imbalance in the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago was symptomatic of the problems which exist between many other small and large states.
Territories or communities in association with one another have been trying to find some kind of balance, some kind of equilibrium in their political relationships and economic relationships, which would enable the smaller community to express itself and develop side by side with the larger community. In a sense, Trinidad and Tobago has been in the past one of the most backward, in that we've taken quite a long time to appreciate that it's not only a matter of policy that is crucial, but it's a structural relationship between the communities, the constitutional provisions which are of considerable importance. What has happened, as you've quite rightly said, in recent times, we've brought into line the structural relationship with the policy pronouncements which have been made from time to time, but which have not really been expressed, and which are exemplified in our national anthem, for example. Here every creed and race find an equal place. And what we've been seeking to do is to have the Tobago community and the Trinidad community exist in conditions of equal consideration and equal applications of justice, so to speak.
The Tobago House of Assembly was to become the vehicle by which equalities would be achieved. He became the first chairman of the Tobago House of Assembly and continued to argue vociferously for greater equality of treatment at all levels of Tobago society.
For his struggles on their behalf, he has earned the gratitude and respect of the people of Tobago.
He brought a high degree of dignity to his office and encouraged all those in the assembly to operate at this high level. Although there were some teething problems at the time of formation of the assembly, in fact, one of those teething problems, I can tell you, is that for 9 months, the representatives in the House of Assembly did not receive salaries. For more than 3 or 4 years, Mr. Robinson operated his office from his own home. Mr. Robinson had a purpose and he had a vision. He looked at things in a way that we don't tend to understand and fathom broad. And he saw that Tobago, like every other body of people, needed some autonomy in order for Tobago to play its part in the development of Trinidad and Tobago.
as the first chairman of the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Robinson employed strategies through his own initiative. Some of the things weren't written in the act.
Mr. Robinson was always a disciplinarian, real disciplinarian. Even though I knew him well from school days, yet I had to be on my P's and Q's when it comes to the performance. He never compromised matters in the sense that he was always a person who insisted on the highest performance. You know, he did not believe in mediocrity at all. When it comes to the question of punctuality, I would think that he never compromised that at all. Many times we'd be having our executive meeting when I was in the House of Assembly. And if the meeting were to start at 1:30, he might have been there at 1:25 and would browse through his papers. But at 1:30, Mr. Warner, close the door.
Personally, I do not think that politics was the core of Mr. Robinson's struggle. I saw his struggle as coming from that inner pride, that Tobago cultural manhood, if you want to call it that, that says to you, you are just as good to make decisions for yourself, to control yourself. And probably Mr. Robinson saw that through the political machinery, but I don't think that was his driving force. I think that even if he was not in the political machinery, he would have still been fighting. And I want to go back to the times when even we had the simple things of cultural competitions between the Trinidadian and the Tobagonian. And he was doing a poem, and he was ensuring that he put everything into the preparation for his poetry competition, that nobody else must win him, because the pride that he had said to him, hi, this is a clash of ability. Let us see what you can do. And he was showing that the Tobagonian ability was no less than that of the ability of anybody, white, black, Trinidadian, Grenadian, whoever, that we had it and we could make it. And so his struggles for the independence, the autonomy, more power to the Tobagonian to decide for himself was not driven by politics. And so I don't ascribe it to being political. And so I think that he will fit in anywhere. Once he's going to ensure justice, freedom, and the ability to decide for yourself, even to make mistakes for yourself, Mr. Robinson is going to perform.
When we return, we'll take a look at the man, his philosophy, and his intellectual outlook. Stay with us.
I'm proud that Mr. Robinson had came from Castara, and there are many children in this village of Castara that can do the same thing, and they have the ability to do it. I hope they watched what Mr. Robinson had done to us, and they will follow him.
Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson was the product of a period when the only avenue to pursue higher education was to go abroad. When he returned from England, armed with his degree in philosophy, politics, and economics, and a degree in law, political ferment was already taking place across the Caribbean. Mr. Robinson would become involved in the wave of political reform and would bring to it an originality of thought that would characterize his career.
In his works, particularly his collection of speeches, Caribbean Man, and The Mechanics of Independence, Mr. Robinson's writings reveal a man committed to certain ideals, ideals that would, from time to time, bring him into conflict with others, as he sought the middle ground between idealism and pragmatism.
It was as an intellectual that he opposed his party's public order bill. It was the idealist and the intellectual in him who addressed the OWTU in 1970, I think, on a subject entitled Our National Crisis. And what he said was, you wouldn't think it was a politician speaking. What he said was, our country cries out for men and women who cannot be bought and sold. Men and women who are prepared to put principle before personality, country before self, morality before power. And it was the betrayed intellectual, the believer in principle, who closed his statement of resignation from the party he belonged to at the time, the ruling party, in this way. He just resigned from his party, and he ends it with, I resign my resignation of the party as from today and definitely. I propose also, after due notice to my constituents, and after explaining my conduct to them in public meetings in the constituency, in accordance with the declaration I made before I was elected, to resign my seat in Parliament. It's only an intellectual who could talk like that. Because a politician in the real world is going to find a way to keep his seat. Again and again, in his work and in his speeches, you see a concern for the rights of the individual, and especially for human freedoms. From early, he was always making the point that the freedom of the individual has to be defended. And that makes me feel that he can be a good guardian. In one of his essays, he poses the problem facing those who are trying to lead our societies, how to ensure that government does not become government of the many by the few in the interest of the few. How to counterbalance the corrupting influence of power. How to guarantee that the vast machinery of state does not destroy the liberty and suppress the personality of the individual. How to ensure that men can disagree and honor another's right to disagree. All these are questions of great current concern in all the ex-colonial countries of the Caribbean. Now, nobody can say whether a man will be able to or will be allowed to live up to his ideals. But if you are to look at his speeches and look at his other writings, you would feel that he has the equipment and he has expressed the will and the wish to be a guardian not only of the state as a whole, but of the freedoms of the individual.
I feel very proud, and I think I can do the same. My ambition would be to become the first female president.
His has always been the broader picture, not just Trinidad and Tobago, but Trinidad and Tobago within the context of the Caribbean. Not just the Caribbean, but the Caribbean as a unique and important region within the world.
Mr. Robinson's efforts towards integration were first felt in his inputs into the promotion of a West Indian Federation. But even after the Federation collapsed, he continued to vigorously pursue the ideal of regional cooperation.
So what we're looking to ultimately is the Caribbean region being a region of production in relation to the outside world, whether it be North America, Europe, or southern using southern in the ideological sense, countries of the south, so to speak, because we are also developing, creating relations with India. We will seek to develop with Africa, with Latin America, as the case may be.
As Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Robinson was responsible for several regional initiatives, including the Caribbean Regional Economic Conference, the proposed Caribbean Supreme Court, and the West Indian Commission, which was mandated to chart a future course for the Caribbean region.
I think that's what we want to deal with, your international tribunal. How does this work, and why? Why do you want this?
Firstly, there are powerful offenders who cannot be brought to justice in their own countries because they can escape the judicial system, the police or the courts, as the case may be. Secondly, there may be offenses committed in other countries, but which injure countries in which the offenses have not been committed, or the offender may commit the offense in one country and escape to another, so that there needs to be international cooperation in order to ensure that offenders are brought to justice. And it's not only in a matter of illicit trafficking in drugs. There are a number of other areas where that kind of action is necessary.
For many years, Mr. Robinson has been the leading proponent of the establishment of an international criminal court. And that court needs to be seen as a complement to national investigations and national prosecutions in cases where states are unwilling or unable to do so. Mr. Robinson has been a director of the Foundation for the Establishment of International Criminal Court for, I believe, 15 years. And it would appear that his work in this area may well come to fruition in the not-too-distant future. Second, in November 1993, Mr. Robinson became vice chairman and subsequently one of the presidents of the International Council of Parliamentarians for Global Action, which is a United Nations affiliated organization with over 1,100 members and of more than 85 countries all over the world. And as president, Mr. Robinson had responsibility for the organization's programs in the areas of international law and human rights. And it is that context that I had the privilege to work with Mr. Robinson, because in June 1995, we organized in Suriname, together with Parliamentarians for Global Action, a seminar on democratization. And Mr. Robinson is one of the presidents, worked very closely with us in the organization of this seminar, which I believe may very well have contributed significantly to the maintenance of democracy in that country.
Throughout his career, President Robinson has represented Trinidad and Tobago at the highest international fora.
And at all times, he has combined intellectualism with a concern for human rights and human dignity.
Largely because of the